This drama pops up every other month, and there are no actual long-form videos covering it, and I fear that it mainly happening on TikTok will only cause more misinformation. So I'm planning to make a multi-video essay type thing to discuss the accusations I threw at Doma years ago when I was 13 and when Doma was 11. I will give explanations of the time, age, and full content depending on what topic I cover. All explanations given are from Doma themselves. I did have proof of this until my Twitter was banned since I said not nice things about Elon, so you're allowed to take some of it with a grain of salt if you want, I guess, but I don't know. That wouldn't be smart on your part considering me and Doma are the people most educated on the topic, and I also did reach out to Doma to help with this video for a little bit for clarifications and instances on situations that I wanted to be completely sure that I got correct. Depending on how long things I cover are, I will add multiple or only one situation in each video depending on how in-depth I need to go. I also don't feel like heavily editing any of these, so it will mostly be me talking, gameplay, and then screenshots added on screen if needed and context from Doma. Before I go into this, I want to stress I do believe to an extent age does excuse actions. It would be one thing if Doma still did these things, but she does not. This is a photo of how the human brain develops, and it does not finish until 25. The reason kids can't drive, consent, or vote is because they are underdeveloped. Most 11-year-olds can't even cook. I will be bringing up her age a lot in this because, well, it's very relevant. When Doma was the age of 11, they posted several animations on their YouTube account that often depicted things that were rather lewd. I won't go into detail because I'd prefer to keep most of Doma's personal trauma as private as I can, but there is an explanation around this. I will only explain what I need to. At a very young age, even before she was 11, Doma was exposed to inappropriate content on the internet around the age of 8 to 9. Because of how seeing pornography when you were little affects your brain, Doma seemingly developed a disorder called hypersexuality. Hypersexuality is a brain's trauma response to many types of sexual trauma, including early exposure to it. In simple explanation, it causes someone's brain to have severe sexual urges that can come mainly in the form of intrusive thoughts or impulsive actions. Because I was young at the time, and I of course didn't understand this or how it worked, all I knew is that kids shouldn't be posting their NSFW. But why is that? Well, I'll explain because it's extremely important. Children drawing NSFW is not inherently bad. If someone is 13 or older, privately drawing NSFW art is a healthy outlet for hormones that does not put the child in any direct danger. Of course, if someone is younger and drawing NSFW, it could be a sign for concern and the child should be given proper help. But the issues start only when the child posts this. Obviously, I believe there was a deeper issue going on, and there was now that I've done further research because Doma was so young. But right now, I'm going to go off the context of a child over 13 posting NSFW just for this explanation's sake. The issue with a child posting this isn't because it's problematic or gross. It's because it's dangerous and puts the child in danger. Obviously, if a child posts NSFW, they are more prone to being preyed upon or getting traumatized. It's the same with consent laws amongst kids. They are there to keep kids safe, not to make it seem like a child taking part in sexual activities is a bad person. Children's brains are still developing, and we have social norms and laws in place to protect them from predators and danger. I was discussing this section with Doma to make sure I got my facts in the situation correct, and she has very clearly learned from this trauma. Her largest project right now is a Roblox game focused on child safety, and she advocates publicly against NSFW posted in spaces kids can see. Thought that would be important to add, but back onto what was happening in 2019 to 2020-ish. The reality of the situation is that Doma was just unwell and acting unsafely and immaturely because of how young she was. The proper route would have been educating the young child and helping them to safety, but unfortunately, that's not what happened. A large group of people began a massive harassment campaign of hundreds of people founded by a content creator called Bucketeers against Doma. Looking back on how this whole situation went, I have a strong suspicion that Bucketeers and his group were part of the UTTP. If you don't know, the UTTP stands for the YouTube Troll Police. It's a large group of people that are known for harassing young children, posting gore, bestiality, CSAM, being racist, and overall just being awful. Their whole thing is hating on anyone who is cringe or out of the norm. They spammed Doma with gore and with pornography even while knowing that she was 11 years old. Unfortunately, all this harassment only sent Doma into a worse mental state, which brings me on to the next topic. Doma was not the only child Bucketeers and his large fan base decided to target. They also chose to target Doma's girlfriend at the time. For simplicity, I will just refer to Doma's girlfriend as S, and S was 10 years old. She was also very mentally unwell and struggled in similar ways to Doma. The harassment began to normalize very toxic and crude behavior between the two. This, alongside both of them being so young and struggling with hypersexuality, resulted in a COCSA relationship between them. COCSA stands either for child-on-child sexual assault or child-on-child sexual abuse. I am referring to the latter of the two, since the relationship was fully digital. I won't put the blame on either Doma or S, because they were both so young, there was no way either of them could understand what they were doing. But this did both permanently traumatize and scar them. At the time of this situation, I was at the age of 13 and closer with S than I was with Doma. Because of my young age, lack of understanding of how nuanced the situation was, and since I only saw the side of S, I was biased. I had also recently wiggled my way out of being groomed twice, and I was hyper-vigilant on anything that could possibly be grooming. I assumed because of a few aspects that Doma was taking part in, that she was grooming S. My first assumption was because of how they seemed to switch back and forth from being very nice and sweet and then back to cruel. And another thing that made me assume this was because of Doma asking S for fan art at NSFW and quote-unquote love bombing. Now, obviously, this was not grooming. Doma was 11, probably didn't even know what grooming was. You need to have intent to groom someone, and to groom is to purposely prepare them for abuse. Grooming is a multiple-step process in which there's an unhealthy power dynamic between the victim and the abuser. There was no power dynamic between S and Doma since they were both so young and immature. The constant mood switching was because they were both extremely mentally ill at the time, and the love bombing can be explained easily. I did go into more detail about this specific explanation in my official statement on Doma video, but I'll recover what I said here as well. I'll leave the video linked in the description if you want that whole explanation there though. Doma is diagnosed with ADHD, and despite the usual public perception of it being a subtle amount of hyperactivity, it is actually a whole neurological condition. It falls under the neurodivergent umbrella and is similar to autism. Of course, a lot of traits in ADHD are related to impulsivity and hyperactivity, though. Very often, people with ADHD end up developing short-term hyperfixations on their partners where affection will become higher than usual. Because of this, it is very common for people with ADHD to love bomb or excessively give during these short hyperfixation spurts. Obviously, at the time, I didn't know any of this, let alone that Doma had ADHD. I literally do the same thing, and I'm sure several of you have as well if you were also born with ADHD. This is a form of ADHD love bombing, and it's separated from normal love bombing in the sense that it isn't an abuse or manipulation tactic. ADHD love bombing is done out of genuine love and passion for a partner and is usually very impulsive. Yes, this can cause strain in the relationship, especially after the hyperfixation ends, because it can seem more bland afterwards. This is something that people with ADHD just need to learn how to handle as we grow older, and obviously it's not Doma's fault she didn't know how to handle it that young. I'm also not even sure if she was diagnosed by that point, so there's that too. Yes, both S and Doma ended up being abusive to each other, and a lot of their actions had been picked up on in the environment they were placed into online by Bucketeers and his fans. This included mutual death threats, threats in general, slurs, discrimination, degradation, and things along those lines. It is absolutely heart-wrenching how often children are influenced and harassed in these behaviors at such a young age. There is no blame on either S, Doma, or anyone else Doma dated at a younger age. Obviously, those who were abused in this situation, including Doma, have every right to hold a distaste and aversion for the person who hurt them. This isn't a black and white situation, and everyone was a victim in this. Most of it was the behavior they were influenced into by growing up in the internet without any restriction. Speaking of behavior that they were pushed into or picked up during the harassment campaign against them, this is another short topic I need to poke at. Unfortunately, one thing that Doma's brain turned into a habit because of the harassment she faced was sending or spamming people with Gore when she was young. This behavior stemmed from the fact that multiple members of Bucketeers fans would do this to Doma and S constantly. Doma realized if she acted just as bad and sent it back, most of them would back off and leave her alone. Obviously, Doma was too young to understand how dangerous this is and how detrimental it would be to both her and those she sent it to. She was being stalked, doxxed, and harassed almost daily by over hundreds of people and had no idea what to do. Her actions were an indirect result of the abuse this group put her through, and as the last resort, she came up with this out of extreme desperation. Doma did this for a few years and recovered, but more recently, in around 2024, she got a little worse again. She had stopped sending Gore for a while, but was drawn back into it by an unhealthy environment. It was hard for her to get out, because unfortunately the document I wrote and posted grew so big, even people I met in real life knew about it. I can't even preface how crazy that is. She had been run out and harassed out of so many spaces, the only place she could turn was to the other problematic people. This was more recent, as in very early 2024. Because she had been outcasted so heavily, the only people willing to be seen with her, and her only friends, were not good people. They thought Gore was funny, and kept pushing that onto Doma to desensitize her to it. Doma was very unwell and lonely, and she had nowhere else to turn to. She ended up being stuck with these quote-unquote friends. She began to come out of it after sending a Gore video somewhere once in a small server, and others were rightfully shocked. They explained to her why it was wrong, and she apologized, and they accepted. Her parents made her take a multiple month-long break from Discord. This helped her get out of the unhealthy mindset. She was abused by many people in this space, and luckily she escaped from it. After healing from this abuse and growing older, she now of course understands the severity of these actions. To my knowledge, she has reached out to who she can in an attempt to apologize and has educated herself on how those actions are harmful and why it's wrong. She is starkly against sending or spamming any Gore to anyone now, and she speaks out about that as well. She's very open about her stances on these things. This will be the last one for this video. Obviously, this won't be the last video, but this will be the last one for this specific first part. But I didn't want to cover this, but she brought it up, and I thought it was important. The accusation of constantly changing names. There have been several occasions where Doma has changed their online alias. And I mean, like, a lot. Obviously, when she was little, this was a way to quote-unquote run away from the drama, and in retrospect, that makes sense. Little kids don't know how to handle all of that attention, especially if it's negative. But Doma has not changed online names recently for the same reason she has in the past. Doma is very open about the drama, and has even put up a long explanation account, which I will leave in the description. The reason Doma occasionally changes her online username more often than other people is because there's been an influx of people creating accounts with her same username and doxing her in said account's bio, profile picture, or content. This is obviously awful and extremely unsafe, so the easiest route for her to take is to slightly change her name. She isn't running or hiding from what she did, she's protecting herself, and she has taken full accountability. She still goes by Doma and prefers to be called such, but she isn't going to risk her safety, and I don't think she should have to please anybody, because her safety should come first. Like I mentioned, this will not be the last type of video I make discussing Doma, and Doma will be helping me with the information I have for these. The next ones are going to be the quote-unquote biggest accusations that were thrown against her, which are Nazi accusations, child pornography drawing accusations, and usage of slurs they can't reclaim, feral art, and zoophilia claims, and that will be what I have in the next one, and there will be more to come, but I am dedicated to clearing up all of this harmful misinformation and the harm that I caused, and I want to fix the situation. Doma is healing, and she's doing so much better, and I am very proud of her. She's working her absolute hardest, and I really hope that people can start to see that. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Stay educated.